Hi, my name is Sebastian, and in this video I want to show you how to use Vim as a tool to edit structured text very effectively. And I came to this idea, or actually I got some feedback on my latest coding session in which I used Vim in order to edit some text. And I got the question like, can I show this a little bit more in a detailed way? And yes, definitely, because for me, using this Vim tool was a big help many times in my career, just when you need to edit text. And this can come just as a general Swiss Army knife, because quite often we get some text in some form. It might be a log file, it might be a certain structure such as XML or JSON or whatever. And knowing how to use a tool very effectively can help you a lot, especially with a few features such as Vim recordings and what that is. So what I want to do in this video is to just show you a similar exercise that I showed before, but I want to walk you through a little bit, calmer, so that you can get everything. I will explain it a little bit more detailed, and then we see where we go. So that is the exercise. First of all, I have two. That is the first exercise to create this song, these 99 bottles of beer again. So what that is, it basically consists of two lines that are always alternating with that numbers of bottles of beer. So 99 bottles of beer on the wall and so on and so forth. And then it's 98 and many times until you reach at 2 and 1. What I want to do now, it's pretty much similar to what I showed in that previous coding session, is to walk you through how to generate that text. Of course, being a lazy developer or being an effective developer, because I don't want to spend too much time on that by writing all of these lines. So basically what I do, I use this Vim here. I want to copy and paste, just the first two lines, and then using some method or some macro to generate the others. So that would be ideal. Okay, let's start with the first one. I will just use my system clipboard to copy and paste that over. 99 bottles of beer on the wall, 99 bottles of beer. And then what I can do now, I want to start with this line to just generate all the other 100 or 98 or something like this lines to say 98, 98 and so on and so forth. What you can do with Vim here, what is helpful? I really like this feature of recordings, Vim recordings, in which you can just record certain actions and then just play them many times. And if you're a little bit, clever about it or a little bit creative about it, this can really be helpful to, edit an arbitrary big number of lines. This really scales. How does this work? Well, we use this feature of recordings in such a way that we press a Q and then some register, for example QA, and then it just records everything that I do into this. And this is literally any action that I can do. I can say I want to go 1, 2, 3 to the right and then stop the recording by pressing Q again and then pressing this at key or shift 2 A, and now you see it does the same thing. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 by just doing this. Well, that's kind of silly. It doesn't actually added much, but now you see I can play this multiple times. For example, I can say 2 and then what is in register A? Now this was 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or 10. Or many times. Okay, now you might say, how does this help me? Well, easy. I could, for example, say I combine this with some actions and then some smart movement, where, for example, I can edit many lines of code. For example, I could say QA, now I'm recording again, I'm overriding what was there before. I jump to the first position. Now I copy this line with Y twice, so this copies the whole line. And now I could insert this with P. Now you just have to understand, how this works in Vim. It will insert it below the current line by just pressing P. And now, as you see, my cursor is also on the second line. Okay, and now what I could do, for example, I could stop the recording again and say, please do this 100 times. So I could literally press 100 at A. And now you see that I'm actually here in line 102 and just have so many of these lines. Well, that's still kind of silly, because you could say I can also just literally press 100 and P, that does the same because I only use this one command, but you understand already, well, I can also combine multiple commands. So let's delete everything here again, and let's look at this in a little bit more detailed level by, well, doing two things, by not only pasting here, but also by using another action. So once again, I want to record. I am here on the current line, and now again we have to be a little bit clever. What is my starting point? Because that's what, you know, the next recording playback session will start again. And now I have to adapt this, of course. So for example, I could say, well, copy and paste this line. This works because now my cursor is again on the second line, and if I here would stop it and then play it again, it will do the same thing and work. But now I'm on this line, I also want to do another thing. I want to decrement the 99 to 98. How would this work? Well, this is now a little bit more tricky. So this does work because of another feature that is a little bit more, well, a seldomly used feature in Vim, that Vim can actually do some basic arithmetics. So I can use Control X, for example, to decrement the next number. It will literally search for a number and then jump to the next one and decrement it by 1. I can actually use this here, so I could say, well, Control X, and now you see 98. And on the right, you also see another number. So what I can do, well, I can go a few things to the right and then press it again, or jump to that number. But now you have to be careful. How do you jump to this number? This really depends now if you later on want to still play your macro. If I would, for example, say, press F9 to jump to that 9, well, here it works, but now after 10 of these lines, then it might be an 8, like 89, for example, and then it won't work again. So you have to be careful. Well, what does the structure look like? For example, I could jump a few characters to the right, if that later still works, or I could jump to the next comma. For example, I can say, well, F comma, I jump here, and then I press this again. I can say, well, press Control X again, and now we have this. Then what I usually like to do with this macros, just to be sure, I jump to the beginning again, and now I can say, well, this recording should work. Now I can stop it with Q, and well, regardless of how long I took by explaining this, it will literally just press all the keys one after another if I play one. So let's say at A, and now you see, now this worked. What did it do? It copied the current line, 98 bottles, pasted it, and then it very quickly, you didn't even see it, so it was very quickly to decrement this and this number. And then we're there. And then I can press it again, press it again, press it again. It now just works. Okay, and now you can say, well, I don't want to press this so many times. I say, for example, 50 at A, and now we're already here. We can zoom through that. Okay, this works. Let's do this again. I have to start on that line. Let's say we're at 40. So what I usually do, not to overdo it, because at the end you might get into some conflicts if it doesn't make sense anymore, or here we will get negative numbers. I usually jump, well, in smaller steps. So even if it's 100, or I'm not sure, is it 100 or 99 or 98, I usually start with 90 and then I go, you know, like step by step like this, 3, 2, and so on and so forth. Okay. So that's the first thing. I think that's already kind of cool, and this can help you in a few situations, not only from that number perspective, that's actually a seldomly used feature, but from the perspective that we can use this recording feature also with more complex commands, and by being a little bit creative about it, that we can say, well, this works also even though the lines actually differ. Okay, now to the second line of each verse or song. Take one down, pass it around, 98 bottles of beer on the wall. What I will do, I will copy this again and then insert it here. So from the system clipboard, take one down, pass it around, 98 bottles of beer on the wall. So is this correct? Yes, that's correct, because take one down means -1, now it's 98. Okay, now I could say, what do I do here? How can I now paste this? Because now if I would copy and press paste many times, well, it would be in the wrong position. So undo, I don't want to do this, but again, I want to use a recording feature to do the same thing. Why a recording feature? Well, now I have another recording, I have another set of steps. What I could do, for example, copy the current line, then go 2 down, or basically go 1 down and then paste it below, and then also do this decrement to go from 98 to 97. So that would work, and this does work. We can do this also with this recording feature. We use another register here, B for example. Now I say, okay, I am on the current line. Again, think of the future when it will be executed in other lines that it still works. I am on the current line. I want to copy it anew. I want to go 1 down and then paste it below, which means here just P. Okay, and then I could again jump forward, for example, by jumping to the comma, or just say, well, Control X in this case also works. It just jumps to the next number, and then it's 97 bottles of beer on the wall. Now be careful, I want to jump to the beginning, but I want to stay there so that the next recording playback still works. I say, okay, stop the recording. This was now recording into B. And now if I play this again with @B, it should work. And yes, it does. It did copy the line. It went 1 down, pasted it below, decrement to 96, and now I'm here. And then with the same regard, I could say, let's start with 80 @B. 80 @B to play it back 80 times, and now I'm already at, well, here 17. I can play this slowly, @B, and so on and so forth. Let's do it 10 times, and we see, okay, 7, 7, 6, 6, and so on and so forth. So this does work. I do it one more time and one more time, and then we have 1 bottles of beer. And then if you remember the song or this previous exercise, now we have to do some other changes, because 1 bottles, plural, that needs to be singular, of beer. And now we could see, well, actually the last lines of the song would be a little bit different. But here there's not that much that we can do with these recordings. That's more an individual change. So it's just the easiest to basically say, well, we go and copy and paste that. So that's, that's easy. 1 bottle of beer. So we basically need to do this, that we say 1 bottle of beer, singular on the wall, 1 bottle of beer. Take 1 down, or sometimes it says take it down, depends on the song. Pass it around, and then it says no more bottles. Basically, instead of 0, it says no more bottles, no more bottles. Go to the store, buy some more, and then 99 bottles. Okay, anyway, these last lines of code, that was just a copy and pasting. But the other ones, that is how you can actually use these Vim recording features in order to edit many lines of code, always in the same fashion. So the thing is, what we need to take care, once we construct these recordings, we just have to pay attention that it will also work in later lines. So we have to be at first a little bit more considerate about it. We cannot just simply edit that it will work, but it pays off in the long run, because then it scales. We can record 1 recording in such a way, it's a little bit slowly, it takes more time, but that we can play it later many times, and then we save all those times, because then it doesn't matter if this song has 100 lines or 10,000 lines. You can literally create that then very, very quickly, and this scales. So that's a very nice feature that we can use in this regard. All right, and now to the second one. The second one is an example that you might see a little bit more often in your work as a developer. So this is now an example with XML, but it's really not about this structure. It could be any arbitrary structure. I had this many times when I was just editing some code or some text that was pasted out of log files or stack traces in Java, or a JSON file or whatever. And now you might argue, well, if this is formatted in valid XML, you can actually use some other tools, for example, some XML command line parser, to parse it into another format and then transfer it. Or of course you can write a small program, such as a Java program or whatever. Yes, but many times either it's not a structure that you can rely on, it's not a structure that you can easily parse, and also it might be more effort to write a parser or some other helper to do so. So in this case, that's also helpful to look into that, to edit this. What we want to do here, this is an XML, and just a random example that I created very quickly. Assuming we have, these are just some lines of code with some ID that we're not interested in, and we have some content that is just this lorem ipsum blind text. And assuming we want to convert this into a JSON with, let's say, a JSON array with just these words. It might be, for example, an array of words, and then we have an array of strings or something like this. You can invent some arbitrary stuff here. But what I want to show you is how to do this again in a way that scales, where it doesn't matter if this code now it has only 52 lines, but if it had 5,000, that it still scales in the same way by using Vim. All right, first of all, what I want to do, and this is now really, I didn't pre-test this, so this is just me doing this a little bit freestyle. What I want to do, I want to make sure that the lines are here quite similar. So usually I jump here to the first line and say, I don't need this valid XML structure. I just delete this. Then Shift G, I jump to the last line, this one here, and say, okay, please delete this as well. And then also what I like them to start from the top. So I go into the visual mode, Shift V, jump to the top with GG, and then just use this less than sign to basically align them to the left, so there is no space here left. This is just a formatting thing, so now it's easier to handle. Okay, now what I could do, let's look into this from a slower perspective, step by step. For example, I want to do something like, I want to have a JSON array in which I might be either like this, or it might be something like this, in which I get the words. I'll just here something like lorem ipsum, for example. Or I could say, well, that should be a JSON sub-object in which I say content equals this, and then so on and so forth. This might also be possible, you know, now you could just think of some arbitrary structure. Actually, let's go with this one just because it's a little bit more interesting. So what we do, we say, well, first of all, we want to get rid of all of that structure here. That's just noise, you know, all of these less than and greater than signs. We don't need this in JSON. So what to do? Now, if we are in this line, now you could say, well, it's easy. I just want to, for example, jump to this uppercase L or everything before that and delete everything before this uppercase L. For example, substitute with C and then T, L. Then I could say, okay, for example, content, something like this. Okay, does this work? And you know, I jump one forward. I now delete everything to the end of the line, uppercase C, and then I do something like this. And well, now I forgot the curly braces, but you know, you get the point. I could use the Vim features to edit this line. Is this a good idea with regards to recordings? No, because it won't work in the next line, because it says lowercase I instead of uppercase L. So we could not, you know, search for the same character to jump there. So we need to be a little bit more specific about it. What is actually an action that will work in all of these scenarios? Or if we say, well, please jump forward so and so many characters, that might not work because the ID here might differ, and then there are more characters, and you know, the structure doesn't work anymore. So again, we just have to be a little bit more creative about it, how the structure looks like. Okay, let's do this. Let's undo this again. What I can do, for example, and now I already want to record this, and let's see if it works. QA, for example. I want to say, well, just please go here. And how can I do this in a way that works everywhere? Well, if the structure here is quite consistent, I could, for example, count the number of greater than signs and then just delete until these. For example, I say delete for 1, 2, 3, 4 of these signs. So for example, say CF, C4F greater than sign. What did I do? C4F greater than sign says C substitute, and then F greater than sign means jump to the next greater than sign, or 4F greater than sign, jump to the fourth next. So to, well, basically this one here. The difference is this will work in every line unless there's, of course, some other XML structure, but assuming this looks like that, then I can use this. Okay, then what I do, well, I already paste everything what I need here. So for example, this curly braces, content, this one, okay, escape. So now this is finished. Now what I need to do, well, again, this really depends. I can jump one word forward, or it might be multiple words in this content. So let's say I want to jump forward to the next less than sign, to this opening, and then say, well, just please delete everything until the end of the line, for example, uppercase C, and then close this here, don't forget the comma, and then of course jump to the beginning of the line and then go one down, so that, you know, the same would work for the next step. Okay, let's hope that everything works here. I can stop the recording with Q and I can play it again. What I usually do, that I play it a few times, so always at A to see, okay, this actually looks good, didn't miss anything, and so on and so forth. Let's play this a few more times. I usually then see, okay, how many lines do I have here? I'm here on line 50 and here on 7. So let's say I do this 40 more times just to see. So again, 40 at A. Okay, looks good so far. 4 more times, and now this already seems to work. Okay, now I have the structure, which now of course I also have to change into valid JSON. So for example, I could say, well, now go to the top here, Shift O to insert one line above, add these add these square brackets, jump to the end, add another one here, and then of course delete the last comma. And you can also bonus points, just indent this again, and now I have this JSON structure. Okay, let's see if this works, or if this looks nice. If I run it through a JSON processor, I save this file, and now on my command line, for example, I could say, well, go here with these JQ tool and then see, okay, this actually seems to work. It now did pretty print my JSON, and well, looks good so far. Could then say, well, please, let's take the first element or something like that. Yeah, seems to work. Okay, so now that is just an example. That's of course now not an XML file anymore, but a JSON file. But that's an example how to edit this structured text now with an XML example, but it's the same story if you would edit, for example, individual log files, if you have to search for some structures here, in which this recording feature is really helpful for you. Especially if you combine it with some, you know, jumps and some edit actions, or even you can do some searches. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is, well, it needs to work on all these lines. So does this, what I'm doing, this action, actually match all of these lines, all of these scenarios, and will it work later on? So that's just something to keep in mind. And with that, Vim can be a really helpful tool, a really good Swiss Army knife for your day-to-day editing text job that you have to do as a developer. And you can be really productive if you're somewhat familiar with some of these features here. And the nice story is it scales really well. So you can start with some very basic recording actions and then just go along and learn as you go, very slowly. But it scales then pretty quickly, even if we have big texts. And in my career, that was a very good helper many times. So I hope this was helpful and interesting to watch. If so, I would really appreciate if you liked the video and subscribe to my channel. And thanks a lot for watching. Bye.